It's been over a month now that I have felt within my spirit that I wanted to share something that happened at one point in my life. Probably, if I was going to give this a title, I would call it "Running Away." And I thought I was running away. Maybe I felt like I was running away, but I assure you, I'm going to give you a three-part testimony. I hope you'll watch till the end. But it's a three-part testimony that God is with us and He has His angels surrounding us even when we've gotten tired and we feel the need to escape from some of the assignments that He's given us. So I'll try to keep this as short as I can so I don't get into a length of speaking here that people will shut it off before you get to the end. But listen to all three parts of this testimony. There was a point in time where I was in Louisiana, and I had been there for a number of years, and basically doing my very best to serve the Lord and follow His lead on many, many things. And I just became very worn out, very tired of everything that was going on. And an opportunity opened up for me in Colorado. I believe God really actually opened up the opportunity. For me, it was, as I said, an opportunity to escape from where I was at and to get away from the pressures. So I took the opportunity, loaded my entire family up, my three sons and my wife, and we pulled a trailer at that time that was too big. You can't pull that size trailer anymore with the kind of car that I had. I had an old 78 Nova. And we were pulling that thing through Louisiana, Texas, and on into Colorado. And as a part of that, we had to go through Raton Pass. If you're not familiar with it, it's a really steep grade, difficult pass to get through for a car without a trailer, much less a car pulling a trailer that's too big for it. And as we were headed up Raton Pass, the car began to overheat a little bit and falter on me. And it faltered to the point that I was losing power, and the car was beginning to roll backwards down the slope. And I looked in my mirrors on the side, and I could see an 18-wheeler just barreling up Raton Pass. I mean, they put the pedal to the metal and they hold it there because they can't let off steam either. But he wasn't changing lanes, and I'm fighting with a car that's rolling backwards and a trailer that's starting to jackknife. And I'm becoming extremely scared that we're about to have a horrific accident. And I yelled, "Jesus," as the trailer is jackknifing behind the car and we're going in all the wrong directions. And my wife yelled, "Jesus," and all of a sudden that trailer and car were sitting on the side of the road just as the truck passed. I mean, this happened in seconds. We're sitting there perfectly straight, perfectly lined up on the side of the road. I don't even know how it happened, but I do know how it happened. God's angels took hold of that car and trailer and shoved it to the side out of the way of that 18-wheeler who never slowed. He blew past us like he hadn't even seen what was going on. That was event number one as part of my escape. Now, when we got to our destination on the western side of the mountains, I was specifically led to a church. And as a part of being in that church, and this is going to be the second part of the testimony, as a part of being in that church, I went to an evening worship session where a few churches got together, and I was able to share with them in song. And as we came back from that late in the evening, and it was very late in the evening, it was near midnight, we were all joyful and having a great time and pulled up in the vehicles in front of the church to separate into our own cars. As we did so, I looked over and there was a man sitting on the curb away from the entryway steps to the church, but he was sitting there. He was shirtless. He had no shoes or socks on. He had tattered jeans, and he pretty much looked derelict. And I went over to him, and I knelt in front of him, and I asked him if there was any way that we could help him. And he was really kind of non-committal, but he had this amazing, piercing stare that he continually, throughout the time I was with him, he would look at me like he was looking way down inside me. And yet here I am dealing with somebody that I think is, on drugs or alcohol, and yet he was extremely perceptive and alert. So I'm praying with him, and I asked him if I could pray with him, and he said yes. And I'm praying with him, and as I'm praying with him, I notice he's got these huge nodules growing out from under his left arm. And I asked him what that was, and he was non-committal. And I said, can I pray for that, for your healing? And he said yes. And I prayed for him with that. And I talked with him a little more. And I asked him at that time, I said, would you like to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior, or as your personal Savior? And he nodded his head. And I asked him if he knew Jesus Christ as his personal Savior. And we went forward with the prayer. And each time we got to the point of asking Jesus, to come into his heart, that we would come to the part where we confess that we are a sinner. And he would not do that. He simply would not repeat that part of it. I tried 3 times and he would not do that. And I said, well, we'll just let that go and we'll try another time. And so the pastor by this time had walked over and saw what was going on, and he said he knew a couple of places that we could take the man to that would take him in for the night. This is after midnight, so the pastor knew these places, I didn't, so we got him into a car, and we were driving along, and I was talking with him, and I got him to tell me his name, and we stopped at the first place, and the pastor went up, now having his name, and knocked on the door of the first place. The first and the second place both went the same way. They knew him, and they knew he had an alcohol problem, and if he had been drinking, they weren't taking him in. So having been turned down twice, we went downtown in the area where we were at, and I was amazed that there was like a triage unit down there. And the triage was packed with people. There were nurses, there were people assisting people that were being brought in. They had tents, tables, chairs. I was amazed. I did not have any idea that any such thing existed, but apparently it was a nightly thing, and there were people there to man these units to take care of people that were coming in with problems, whatever they were. And as we approached there, and we all got out of the car and were walking with this man, shirtless, no shoes, no socks, a nurse came right up to us, and she said, she knew him. She knew who he was. She said, I'll take him from here. Have you guys touched him in any way? And I said, well, yes, I did. I laid hands on him and I prayed with him. She said, I want you to come over here to this washroom, the both of you, and I want you to wash up really good because what he has is actually contagious. And so we did what we were told and went over there, cleaned up, and we came back, and she's taking information from us, and she's letting us know. She already knows who he is. And she said, I'm going to go ahead and see to it that he's taken care of, and you guys can go home for the night. And I looked at the man, and I said, we'll be back in the morning to check on you. And he gave me that, yeah, sure look, but he still had that piercing stare where he was staring at me. And I said, I promise you, we will be back here in the morning. When we wake up, we'll come over and we will check on you to make sure you're okay and try to make arrangements for you. And he stared at us the whole time we walked away. I kept looking over my shoulder, looking back, and we got in the car and drove off and went home. And we did come back the next morning. And this is the part of the testimony I really want you to get. We came back the next morning, and we inquired at that triage unit for the nurse. Nobody had ever heard of her. Nobody knew the name that we gave them. Said, nobody by that name works here. So we told them about the man. I mean, we were puzzled. We told them about the man that we had brought, and they said they had no record of him. They had no record of his name. They had no record of him being dropped off. And they said, well, there's a lot that goes on in the middle of the night like that. They could have just, if he was serious, and I mentioned the fact that what he had was serious and contagious, we were told. So they said, well, they may have taken him straight over to this particular place at the hospital. So we went there. And we walked in and we got into the area of admissions, and we were asking for him by name to see if he had been brought in there. And they said they had no record of anyone by that name having been brought in. And in the background, another nurse was listening, and she said, "I know that name." She said, "That name is familiar to me." She said, "Go upstairs and go into this particular office and check to see if they've processed him." So we went upstairs and we went to the office we were told to go to. And when we got there, someone else there recognized the name, and she said, "Oh, yeah, I've got his file." She said, let me go get it. And she went back in the back area, and she comes back without a file, and she's got this strangest look on her face. And she said, "What did you say his name was?" And I told her what his name was. And she said, "Sir, that's not possible." And I said, "Well, he specifically told us that was his name." And she said, "Well, he died 6 months ago. He died 6 months ago." And we were shocked. The pastor and I were shocked. We just looked at each other, and we walked out of there. And I said, "Pastor, we were visited. We were tested by angels last night to see how we would respond to somebody in need." I said, "Those were angels," because the whole thing was real. There was no faking. We had too many people that had seen the man. They had seen us talking to him. I mean, it just blew all their minds at church when we gave them the testimony. And that was that day, because that was on a Sunday. We had been out at a Saturday night prayer meeting, and they had all seen the man too. Now, there were many other things I could tell you that went on while we were in that city that are also a part of my testimony, but I want to talk about the fact that at the end of our time there, which is approximately 1 year, it became very clear to me that I had to go back to where I had left from. I wasn't real happy about it. To be honest, I was more than just a little unhappy about receiving that kind of a direction. I was more like Elijah by the brook. You know, God had sent the ravens to take care of me, and we had been taken care of. We had, been barely surviving for the year we were there, but we were happy. And so here we were being directed to go back to the place that had become so hard for us. So obediently, we packed everything up. Too big a trailer again, so my brother actually took his truck and he pulled it over the mountain for us and got us back to a place where I wouldn't have to deal with any mountains. And, excuse me, we were driving back and we got into Texas. And my little old car with too big a trailer again. We got to a certain place in Texas. I don't remember exactly where it was, but the car started to roll steam out from under the dash. And then it started to pour water out from under the dash. And I said, "Oh man, the heater core has busted. We got a problem." But fortunately, when it happened, I was close to a place where I could exit and pull into a truck stop type of area. And I was standing there, and I parked, because of our situation, I parked probably 50 to 75 yards away from any vehicle, any truck, any building. We were in a huge parking area, and there was nobody around us. So my wife gathered the boys up to take them into the restroom and take care of things inside and get us something. And I popped the hood open, and I'm standing there looking under the hood. I don't know why, because the problem was under the dash. But all of a sudden I heard a voice behind me. And I turned around, and there was a man standing there, medium build, about the same height as me, very friendly look. He had a young boy standing next to him. He was probably in his early teens. And he said, "You got a problem going on?" And I was kind of looking around like, "Where did you come from?" And I said, "Yeah, my heater core let go, and trying to figure out what to do." And he said, and I have some mechanical ability. And he looked over my shoulder, and he pointed into the engine area, and he said, "Look here." He said, "Just take this hose from here that feeds off the engine into the heater core, cut this other hose loose, and reroute this hose from that engine that goes into the heater core back into the engine, and you'll be bypassing the heater core. And you can go on down the road, and then when you get time, then you can deal with replacing the heater core and getting that fixed, because it's reasonably warm and you really don't need it right now anyway." So I said, oh, my goodness, I should have known that. I said, I turned around, I said, I want to thank you. I should have known that. And I turned around and there's nobody there. And I jumped out and I looked around the car. There's nobody walking away. There was nobody there. I had been visited again by an angel. Here I was trying to run away, escape. I'm being sent back to the place I escaped from. Going there, God sent angels to take care of me. While I was there, he sent an angel to test me. And on the way back, here I am, disgruntled and not wanting to go. I'm having a problem. And he sends an angel to tell me how to get out of the problem. Now, it may just be hard for you to believe, but I'm telling you the truth. I turned around. There was nobody there. And it was in a moment's time. There was no way for them to walk away and just disappear. I was out in the wide open, in an open parking lot. What I want you to understand is that even when you get worn out, folks, God is still with you. He won't forsake you. His love goes beyond anything that we can understand for love, even when we're being obedient, but we're being angry about it. To obey his will, to go where he wants us to go. He's there with us. He knows everything that's going on, and when we have troubles along the way, he sends help. God bless you all. I hope these testimonies have blessed your heart.